Good morning to my Sir Fakur Razi, and my fellow friends. So I'm here, myself is SETHU Sivan, ID number was 25 BDT 19F2901, here to present the PPT presentation, the question that given by our sir. So before everything we go into the questions, I'm here, first of all, I'm going to share the question that was given to us, the introduction basically. So Moklek Berhad is an international sized telephone company. There were 5 groups of IT auditors, including my group. My group consists of 2 persons. So after an audit done, we should find some of the information has been changed, not performing frequent backup, store backup data off-site, employees who access a system that is not assigned to them. For example, default setting is configured to firewall. So the next was the question were given, the PPT questions were given to us to solve, to give a solution to it. So the first question was determine and construct an audit checklist by using the suitable security governance, refer to the rubric given before answering the question. The second question was explain steps of conducting audit or activities based on the above statement given. Refer to the rubric given before answering the questions. So yeah, before everything, you just go what is actually compliance actually means. So compliance was an independent evaluation to ensure that an organization is following some external laws, rules, and regulations of internal guidance, such as corporate bylaws, controls, and policies and procedure. So because compliance was a set of rules that a person should follow to ensure that organization is going well. So what are the proof of compliance that we are looking up to? So here I mentioned 11 proof of compliance, such as align the audit program with the business's objective, audit the audit program, mitigation of emerging risks related to action taken. So is there any of the sensitive information has been changed, or adopt a risk-based approach to audit planning, system backup ID done frequently, or where does the backup data actually store, and why assigned people was accessing the system, firewall setting that configure, the good and services that organization offers to do impact level of risk for a security breach. The policies and the procedure for the organization must align with the organization goals, or they could be cause any kind of conflicts and confusion to the company, which leads to security gaps the attackers could exploit. So there are the examples I mentioned here, what proof of compliance was actually are in the business sector. So next we are going to look at recommendations. So the recommendations for found problems after the auditing in Moklek Berhad. So what are the problems you are facing here? As I mentioned earlier, so I'm going to mention again so you have a clear view what's going on. So the problems, the 5 problems were mentioned in the question. So first some of the information was actually changed, not performing frequent backups, store backup data was in offsite, employees who access system that is not assigned to them, and the last and not least was default setting is configured to firewalls. So what are the recommendations I and my teammate were giving for the particular problem was set a logbook for the system and assign a team to take care of the backup plan so the frequent backup will actually occur. So try to do cloud backup because offsite is vulnerable or will occur data corruption. We never know, but will occur. So the next is fired whoever access the system without which not assigned to them, or have a strong password so the only assigned employee can actually access the system. Because many business have many kinds of system, many teams were split it around to do some certain tasks. So to be more safe, either we're going to fire them who actually going to other people's system, or the employees should have a strong password to keep the data safe and the project safe. So next was allow specific traffic or specific sources IP addresses. So these are the 5 recommendations I and my fellow teammate were giving to the problem, the solution especially. So next we're going to look is a status code. So this what status code? We have 4 kinds of status code: fully implemented, partially implemented, not implemented, and not applicable. So what is fully implemented meaning. So the process is defined, documented, and practiced, which is implemented in the particular businesses or organization. So partially implemented means process is practiced. It's like not fully implement, but they're trying to implement without adequate documentation. Process must be defined, documented to ensure repeatability of process and mitigate the risk. So next was not implemented. So what is actually not implemented was, right? So the meaning for the status code was process is defined, but not in the practices of in the organization. So next was not applicable. Process is not applicable for the company as per the scope. So next we're going to look is 6 steps conducting audit activities. So conducting audit activities, right? There are several stages. For example, because as mentioned here is a 6 step. So every steps have their own stages and processes. So there are several stages to conducting auditing or as part of bigger audit program. Depending on the type of audit, the degree to which each of the following process is carried out is varies. So as I mentioned earlier, each step has their own processes and different steps to do so. So next we're going to look with steps of conducting audit activities. So step number 1 is initializing the audit. So contact the auditors and any design leaders as soon as possible. So next was preparing audit activities, conducting audit activities, preparing the audit report after the audit was done so that we know what's going on and what should the organization should see. Next was distributing the audit report to the fellow authorities and completing the audit. So next is the same thing as I mentioned earlier, initializing the audit. So the step 1 was contact the auditee and any design leaders as soon as possible, defining the audit's goals. Determine the audit's capabilities and reviews assigned to ensure that the goals can be met. So choose the auditing team. So this is the first step. So initiating the audit before starting anything, doing the report. So the first thing we should do is initiating the audit. So second was preparing the audit activities. For example, examine all required documents, check everything, compile any necessary action plans or papers. Prepare a plan for the audit and assign tasks as appropriate. Third was conducting audit activities. For example, hold a meeting, ensure that all parties agree with what the plan, for example, everyone should agree to what they are saying. So double check that you are able to carry out the audit steps outlined in the plan. So ensure that all the steps are taken and checked. Introduce the team members to one another and at management. The team should meet on a regular basis to evaluate the changes information, assess programs, and also if required, reassign the work. So that's how, like after conducting and examine all the papers and conducting such audit activities, next step was going to be prepare audit report. So collecting all verifying data, review the information sources, and after receiving the audit documentation, examine the evidence and compare it to the audit criteria. Examine the outcomes. Even though the auditing was done, we should always examine the outcomes. Findings from the audit, the findings will either meet or fail the fulfill of the audit standards. For a non-conforming findings, keep track of the supporting evidences. Even though whatever is non-conform findings, you always should keep track on it, keep finding the evidence to it. So examine the information with the auditee to confirm that it's accurate. The auditing reports always should be accurate. The team should assemble the review finding and define appropriate audit phases. So the next was distributing audit report. The team leader should present the result together with a comprehensive, accurate, and clear audit report, which is supplied within the agreed upon time limit. It's a delay occurs, the auditee and program manager should discuss it. So why it's happened, why it's not done in the time, is there any problems facing by the team? The report must be dated, reviewed, and approved in accordance and agreed upon the protocols. As specified in the strategy, distribute the report to the appropriate recipient. The last but not least was completing the audit, the last step. The work is accomplished after all the scheduled activities have been completed. Documents are kept or destroyed in accordance with the process and standards specified in the beginning of the audit. Notify the audit client and auditee as soon as feasible if disclosure is required. Incorporate the result of the audit into the improvement process. So next is going to be the improvement process, the improvisement process. And last was conclusion. So we are here in a conclusion. So in conclusion, security audits ensure an in-depth audit of an organization, infrastructure, and its security postures. It helps determine the risk exposure, detects vulnerabilities and security flaws that may impact the security of the organization. Overall, the information security audit facilitates risk management, risk governance, business continuity, and incident management, third-party risk management, and compliance to industry best standards and regulations set by the global governing body and regulators of industry. So that's from me and my team, Jaganda Alaki Prabhakaran. So that's our PPT presentation. I hope you guys like the way we contribute our ideas and knowledge into the PPT presentation. And thank you very much.